Tails. Tails. You call for or against?
For.
For. So it's Mallorca International for. BIC will be against the motion. Back here at 10 o'clock. Okay?
Yep.
Well, welcome everybody. I think we've got to know each other quite well with that excellent coffee and buns, if I can really say so. Most welcome on a cold day like this. Many thanks, Ms. Miller, and of course to Sally. Thanks for the warm, especially warm welcome. And of course to the BIC team, welcome. I hope you've enjoyed your trip up here. And our best wishes to Gemma. I understand that Gemma's still not too well, so simply pass on my best wishes to her. Especially, yeah, at the back, if you give it. So, this is the first debate in the second round of the preliminaries. Every school has taken part in one debate so far, so this is you starting the second round. You all know if you've won or got it, needing to win this one. It's all starting to warm up a little bit, and we're trying to make the motions equally interesting for you in the second round of debates. This morning, the debate, as you know, is Mallorca International against the BIC. And as ever, I would like to thank our sponsors, because without them, of course, nothing is possible. Palmer Pictures, Imperial Properties, Clínica Granada, thanks to Vivian, Ticket Travel, and Ibex Insurance. And of course, our Rotary team. Viv, Harry, John, thanks as always for everything. The Mallorca International team today. Arena, Porcel Vico, have I said it right? Yes, more or less. Emmy Dunn Squire, and Eleanor. And the BIC team, Zach Metcalf, Bennett Kramer, and Elke Took. That may not necessarily be, that's the list I got, not necessarily in the list, the order you'll be speaking in. Timekeeper today, of course, David Tittle. Our judges, Sarah Collett, Gail Davis, and our spokesperson for the jury, Steve Mason. The motion today is: the unelected power of global social media companies is dangerous. The unelected power of global social media companies is dangerous. After the toss, for the motion, Mallorca International; against the motion, BIC. You all know the rules and regulations, but just to remind you, we start the first bell. After the first minute, that points of information are allowed. At minute 4, the bell rings again, points of information stop, and of course 5 minutes the bell stops as well. The 2-minute for summary, no interruptions are allowed. So with that in mind, let the debate begin, and over to the timekeeper.
Thank you, Kate. Good morning. Our first speaker, let's start please.
Social media is like an open book. You have the access to a wealth of information with incredible ease. However, this has gone too far. Within these pages lies sensitive and vital information, and without proper control, these pages might rip and just disappear into the nowhere, leaving us uncertain about who has the access to this information. Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges, worthy opponents, and guests, I stand before you today to advocate that the unelected power of global social media companies is indeed dangerous. My name is Irina Potsuliko, and throughout this debate, me and my team will provide you with logical reasoning and credible evidence to convince you of the merits of our position. Our second speaker, Emmy Dunn Squire, will be discussing the devastating impact that social media can have on individuals' mental health and grave consequences. Our third speaker, Ella Moore, will be discussing that social media companies are motivated by profit, and therefore they make decisions that endanger and exploit the users. And I, as the first speaker, will be discussing how social media companies wield their influence to detrimentally impact the political landscape. It's not a secret that social media has impacted our world and turned it around by 360 degrees. It has profoundly impacted our society, transforming the way we communicate, access information, social and political movements, and provided many places and creative ways for self-expression. So there are positive, yes. However, inspiration leader and philosopher Nelson Mandela once said, "The greatest glory in living lies is not in never falling, but rising every time you fall." Indeed, the paradox lies here. Social media existence and undeniable utility have preserved it deeply in our lives. However, these platforms have impacted us so much that society is now living in darkness, believing everything that is said on these platforms. This is the world we, as a community, have created. Let's start off by zooming in on the motion. The unelected power of global social media companies is dangerous. What is dangerous? The fact that the figures that hold power over these platforms were not elected by its public? Or that the platforms themselves are set and managed incorrectly? Well, let me be clear. Both of these statements are true. The fact that society does not know who this powerful figure will be is frightening. You don't know what ideologies they support or where they are on the political spectrum. Their positions might build an unfair and biased platform with no real information, but the information that they want you to believe. Brexit, the official withdrawal of the United Kingdom from Europe in 2016, as voted for by the people, offers a clear example of how the unelected power behind social media can manipulate technology to defeat regulations. During the Brexit referendum campaign, Facebook played a ginormous role in influencing voters. So much so they could say that the outcome of the Brexit vote was a result of concerted efforts to influence voters' opinions using target ads.
Points of information, please. So at the start you said that you're going to give us logical arguments for that the unelected power of global social media companies is indeed dangerous. And then you said that people believe everything that is in the media, but then there's something called like fake news, and people discover that, and people know that there's fake news. So there are a lot of people that also know. For example, my parents tell me that you should not believe everything what's in the media. They show me examples. So like, why are you saying everybody believes that? Because I don't.
I understand your point, but as my example for Brexit, most of the people were affected. It's not everyone, I agree, but most of the people get affected because these platforms are a really powerful influence. An example of disinformation, at the moment, Turkey was not even planning joining the EU, but things like this were posted. But the perpetrators made sure that as a country, Turkey's social and economical problems were painted at the most negative light and false fact that it was trying to join the EU. Who would want to be in the EU if Turkey was in it too? This is both discrimination and manipulation. This is the world we have.
That was...
Yeah, can I have one sentence? Or is it?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you.
If I please could just make a point, just to remind you that points of information must be maximum 15 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Zach, first speaker. Ready?
Yep. It's the choice that terrifies me in The Handmaid's Tale. This quote holds a lot of meaning to me, and I think it's really important to consider this during this discussion. I promise I will come back to this later, and if you just bear with me for now, and just be kind enough to keep it in the back of your mind, that would be great. Danger has the literal definition of able or likely to cause harm or injury. Now, I do not think such a strong term can be used to describe the global social media companies, as they don't cause us physical harm or injury. In fact, harm is not the company's intentions at all. Social media companies do their best to mitigate the harm done on their websites and apps, policing the people on them as best as they can. Policing online shouldn't even be their job, with that not being a requirement of companies in the physical world. That is the job of the police there, not the companies. So why do we say that social media companies cause harm? That is their fault because it's not. They are going above and beyond to protect us from the harm that other online users can do. Eleanor will go on to speak about this more later. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, the honourable judges and the opposing team. Today, my team and I will be discussing the motion, the unelected power of global social media companies is dangerous. It is important to acknowledge the very real concerns surrounding social media companies. Issues such as the spread of fake news, the proliferation of hate speech, and the potential for algorithmic bias, all of which have undoubtedly raised alarm bells. It's clear that some form of intervention is required to address these challenges, but this isn't the fault of the global social media companies. It's the fault of those who wish to use social media for negative reasons. We challenge social media companies on the faults of social media as we view their source of power as evil. But this isn't fair. Just because we see it as unelected, it doesn't mean it's not freely given or that the companies are the only people responsible for the faults in the world, online world. If we argue that companies are responsible, then I would also argue that we should hold governments around the world to account as well. The policing of social media, which I mentioned earlier, surely falls under the jurisdiction of governments worldwide.
Point of interest?
Yeah.
These regulations put in place by the government often take years to implement, and in addition, the regulators are often biased and corrupt.
It's better than there not being regulations, right? Yep, can I continue? Okay. So, where was I? Surely we are not holding them up to higher standards than the standards set for companies in the physical world. If we have a problem with the dangers of social media and the influence that social media has on the average person, then we must look to governments for solutions and protection. The elected bodies of the world should hold the most responsibility for the safety of the internet. Everyone here, I'm sure we saw the motion and the words undemocratic power, and we all cringe a little internally. The dislike for anything undemocratic is inbuilt in us, and for many valid reasons, that is so. I'm going to change this assumption, me included, made. Democratic power is power that is given by a majority. On social media, every time we use it, we choose to give the power to the companies that own the social media apps. Therefore, the power that the global social media companies hold is democratic. Every single person using social media gives them that power willingly, chooses to give them that power. If it is believed that the global social media companies' power is dangerous and shouldn't be theirs, then it is only up to us as a society to take that power away, as the power they hold is only what we give them. The problem is not social media, not the companies that have set up. The problem is social media, not the companies that have set up the online space. Whilst global social media companies have the power that we give them, it isn't infinite. We cannot expect them to police the online world alone. Instead, we must look to the governments we vote in and ask why they are not doing anything. Now, I want to bring your attention back to my quote from the beginning. It's the choice that terrifies me, the handmaid's tale. I would love you to consider it as I go on. The danger the online world poses to us is in no means the fault of social media companies. To choose to believe something is something I cannot do, as I cannot choose to believe, and I hope you join me in this. In a world where the harm and dangers of social media are thereby the active choice of global social media companies. Thank you for listening.
As the opposing team has mentioned, the dictionary definition of a danger is something that is able or likely to cause harm. This can be physical, emotional or psychological, and social media possesses the potential to inflict harm on all aspects mentioned. Good morning, honourable judges, opposing team and audience members. My name is Emmy Dunn-Squire, and today I will be discussing the devastating impact that social media can have on an individual's mental health and its grave consequences. To begin this discussion, first it is imperative that we understand who actually is social media targeting. A staggering 90% of teenagers aged 13 to 17 use social media. When you are between the ages of 13 and 17, your brain is constantly developing. It is growing and modifying as it learns new information. This means it is highly impressionable. So if a young brain is being constantly overwhelmed with an influx of new and diverse information, gradually it will impact their perception of both the world and of their own identity. The primary purpose of social media is to drive comments, likes and shares. These trigger the brain's reward centre, releasing high levels of dopamine, a neurotransmitter that triggers a pleasurable feeling similar to that of when taking drugs. It keeps the consumers coming back over and over again. These likes, comments and shares have been created by social media companies to create a highly addictive product. And while over a short period of time, the dopamine can create a temporary feeling of pleasure, in the long run, social media can have catastrophic impacts on individuals' mental health, especially to those still developing. We all have the tendency to create a false image of ourselves. This is done through social media platforms, through selective posting, filters and editing. And although it may seem harmless, long term this can create a decreased sense of self-worth and confidence and an altered body image, not just to those themselves, but to everybody around them. A study taken in the UK showed that the amount of people suffering from some type of eating disorder reached its peak in 2009. This was the same year that social media became available on mobiles. Another study showed that female suicide rates of those between the ages of 10 and 14 increased by 151% compared to that of 2001 to 2010. Yes, just 10 years old. This is not a coincidence. There is a direct correlation between depression, anxiety and other mental health conditions and social media. While there is no denying that social media also has many positives in today's society, how can we argue that social media is not dangerous when there is so much evidence clearly stating that it can have destructive effects on individuals? Christopher James Dawley signed up to social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram and Snapchat when he was just 14. When he was 17, he tragically chose to end his own life. He was sociable, intelligent and loved by his friends and family. However, shortly after signing up to social media, he began to become more closed off to the world around him. He would often stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, endlessly scrolling through Instagram and messaging his friends. It became an addiction. Due to the enthralling algorithms created by social media companies, he couldn't stop. He became obsessed with his body image and sleep deprived. He was developing an ever-decreasing sense of self-worth. Eventually it became so low that he tragically succumbed to his inner despair, taking his own life. When we found him, his phone was still on, still in his hand. He was so addicted to it that even the last moments of his life was about posting on social media, claimed his devastated mother shortly after his death. Now this is just one young boy's story, one example of a family that has been destroyed because of the negative effects of social media. There are hundreds of people with stories as heartbreaking as this one. So now how can we argue that social media is not a danger to those who use it, when there is irrefutable evidence that it can cause harm? So now consider again, is the unelected power of social media not a true danger in our society today? Thank you.
Welcome, when you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed judges and fellow debaters, I stand before you today to argue the motion that the unelected power of social media is dangerous. While it is crucial to scrutinize the role of these companies in our digital age, we must also recognize the positive aspects of their influence. I will present 3 key arguments to support this. Firstly, it is essential to acknowledge that global social media companies have transformed the way we communicate, connect and access important information. They have created a platform for billions and individuals to express their thoughts. share experience and engage with people from different backgrounds. This democratization of communication empowers individuals and amplifies their voices, making a powerful tool for personal expression, social connections, and even social change. The very essence of social media is about giving power to the people. Secondly, social media companies are private entities and users voluntarily agree to the terms and conditions when they sign up for these platforms.
Yes, they give terms of use, but in reality, for example, children actually read all of them.
Yeah, they do, because some stuff is good. For example, if there would be something interesting, if there would be something bad, like a natural disaster, if there's something like that would happen, or if there would, for example, in America, there are a lot of storms, if something like this would happen, the kids are maybe clever to tell their parents that something like this happens. The parents already probably know, but it's not just bad information, and you can see it as one point and the other one. I see it as this point. This principle of choice aligns with democratic values and individual freedom. Thirdly, the unelected power of social media companies can be harnessed for social benefits. In times of crisis, natural disasters, these platforms often play an important role of disseminating critical information, connecting individuals with loved ones, and mobilizing support and relief efforts. They also facilitate the sharing of information about social and political issues, fostering essential discussions and movement. Social media has been a catalyst for anti-society changes, from the #MeToo movement to Black Lives Matter and climate activism. It has allowed for global awareness and action and crucial matters. In conclusion, the unelected power of global social media companies have created an environment that empowers individual, democratizes communication, and fosters societal progress.
Of interest?
Yes?
You mentioned a lot about all the positives that can have and how it can help society,
Yeah.
but it's also important that we're aware that it can spread a lot of hate and can cause bigger issues that are negative.
It does, but that's not the fault of the companies, it's the fault of the people that spread it. You said share, like, and comment. It's people that just want to spread. That's why I have an evidence that people like that are getting fined and they're getting hacked from organizations that are just made for that. They are trained for that. What is important to address concerns related to privacy data, security and content moderation. We must also acknowledge the positive contribution of these platforms. Many examples include Google, Facebook, and Twitter. Rather than viewing these companies as threats, we should aim to create a balanced framework that ensures responsibility and ethical use of platforms while safeguarding individual liberty, freedoms of expression. The unelected power of global social media companies should be seen as an opportunity to harness the collective potential of our global society for positive change and social progress. Thank you.
Nothing vast enters the life of mortals without a curse, said the Greek playwright Sophocles. Well, social media is the most far-reaching means of communication in human history, with 4.9 billion users. Yes, social media has influenced beneficial changes in society, but we often turn a blind eye to the dark side of social media, where morals are thrown out the window. As my fellow teammates have intimated, there's something sinister behind the rising suicide rates in the elections tipped by social media. Good morning, honorable judges and esteemed members of the opposing team. My name is Ellen Moore, and today I will shed light on the secrets social media companies have tried to keep, but everybody should know. You should know, as it puts you in danger. Firstly, I'd like you to consider this. What is the purpose of social media? If you thought to communicate, to share, you're partly right. But if you didn't also think about profit, you're not
Point of
thinking.
information. You said about the rising suicide rate. That's the fault of the people, not the companies. That's the fault of the users.
as I'm about to mention in my speech, it's the fault of the companies for influencing people to be suicide. The primary obligation of any company is to its shareholders. This is defined by law, and this makes them slaves to generating profit. Thereby, social media companies prioritize shareholder value over our safety as their users. And their profit relies on ad revenue, the income companies earn from ads being seen on their platform. So how do companies increase their ad revenue? By selling their users to their advertisers. We are not the customers, we are the products. In order for us to be shown more ads, we need to be on the platform. Thus,
Points of interest. So you're talking about advertising in like, for example, in companies, in social media companies, that's true. But if you watch TV, you also see ads, do you? Or if you have, you see ads. So you also, you can also see the ads in the social media companies. And why do you not giving examples of what kind of ads? So can you please explain me an ad, for example, that's so bad for people?
well, for example, on social media, there were advertisements promoting political extremism, which therefore influenced the presidential campaigns in the US on Facebook.
Well, that's when users...
Sorry.
And they collect data about what images we stop at.
Points of information. Well, the companies don't get money from suicide, do they? So, how's it?
No, but they don't care for the consequences. The consequence is suicide due to their advertising.
I'm sure they're trying their absolute.
And what do they do with this data? They predict our actions, what videos might trigger anger and sadness, and create algorithms that keep us scrolling, watching ads. Never mind that this content we're being fed may be harmful, inappropriate, or even propaganda, and leading to suicide. It doesn't matter to them if our mental health is strained, they just need to program us into scrolling. Social media companies trade in human thoughts and futures. And what if we're not on our phones? They'll assault us with notifications. Oh, somebody's liked my post, let me check. And suddenly, 20 minutes gone, 30, an hour. Hasn't this happened to all of us at least once? Ask yourself, is this normal, ethical, or have we just succumbed to mass worldwide manipulation? A handful of companies controlling billions, controlling you. It's true that social media companies do some good, but it is unreasonable of us to label social media as solely a tool or a service, because if that were the case, they would wait patiently to be used. Instead, it manipulates us, steals our attention, and puts us in danger. To conclude, Edward Tufte noted, there are only two industries that call their customers users: software and illegal drugs. Social media is a drug, and we're being prescribed it by social media companies to enrich their shareholders. So are we willing to let our thoughts, our safety, and our future be compromised by social media giants? Or do we stand up and demand a future where our lives are not commercialized for profit? Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thank you to Mallorca International School for welcoming us so warmly for today's debate. Today, I'm here to address an important issue for today's society and argue against the notion that the unelected power of global social media is dangerous. The motion suggests that major social media companies have too much power for an unelected body, and that it is so dangerous. While you might argue that there's a lot of harmful and therefore dangerous content on social media, like mean comments and false information, in my opinion, it's not the companies that are to blame. The truth is, it's really hard for these companies to monitor everything people post. There's so much content being shared all the time. Just refresh any social media platform a few times over a period of a minute to see how much information there is. And it's difficult for them to keep track of it all. Social media's companies do try to use their power to make things safe, but it's not an easy task. The real problem comes from us, the users. Sometimes we don't think before we post or share something. We don't always check if something's true or kind before we share it. And that's where things can get messy. It's up to each of us to be careful about what we say and do online. All the information is also checked by the big companies online to check if they're true or false, because we don't want any false information.
Yes. You said that they're not able to process all that's being posted. So then how are they monitoring if everything's true or false?
Well, there's not all of it that they can check, because there's so much information online being posted every single second. But they monitor the basic things, like the most important parts of it, and not the small little parts that people try to get into. Social media companies are at their core, are platform designers to make easier communication, connection, and sharing of information. They have changed the way people interact and stay informed, enabling a global exchange of ideas and perspectives. While they struggle with challenges like content moderation and privacy concerns, it's important to recognize that their primary aim is to provide a space for diverse voices to be heard. The responsibility for finding a healthy digital environment lies with us online users, who have the power of content of their interactions. With proper education and responsible use, social media can continue to be a valuable tool for positive social change and connection, rather than a source of unnecessary concern. Social media. The dangers of social media and the negative things we see on social media aren't just because of the companies. They come from things that are already happening in the world. Issues like bullying and people being unkind to each other didn't start because of social media. These things were happening long before Facebook was invented. Social media just makes it easier to see. For example, bullying can happen whenever and wherever online. My friend a few years ago got an ugly picture taken of her and put onto the internet. It got shared, and she actually got depressed and didn't go to school for months. After a while, these people that put the picture on the internet took it off. But this wasn't the social media's fault for having the picture online. It was our fault. Never the social media's fault, because the media can't control if it was on their website. So instead of blaming only the big companies and those in charge, all we need to do is try and be more thoughtful on how we can use social media. Let's think about it before we post or share anything. Let's make sure we're kind, not spreading the things that are true. We have the power when we are using social media. So it's up to us to make it a better, kinder, and safer place. If we're all trying to be nice to each other, all these things might not happen in the future, and social media companies might not get cancelled for not doing anything that is not in their power to change. Thank you.
Thank you. May I invite the lead speaker, please, for the IC to sum up against the motion.
First. Yep. So Speaker, when you went right off topic, I cannot see much correlation between Brexit and the topic. And people don't believe everything online. Like, I have a 64-year-old father. He doesn't believe everything he sees online. Speaker 2, 90% of 13 to 17-year-olds use social media. Where's the source? Yep. And it's not the company's fault that people have eating disorders and commit suicide. It's the users. Speaker 3, same. It's not the company's fault. The company doesn't get money from suicide or eating disorders. And I'm sure it's in the company's best efforts to make the most ethically correct platform they can. And you said something about notifications. You can just turn them off in settings or delete the app. And also, for the fake news part, everyone just generally, there is now fact-checking algorithms online, and you must have seen them. they basically, if you see, just an example, new COVID variant, yeah, it will say below fact check, and you can click on the link and it'll fact check it. And that's it, so. Yep.
This debate is not just about words, it's about the safety of the world. And our arguments presented today prove that the unelected power of social media companies is leading us down a path fraught with danger. Despite the few positive changes these companies have influenced, there is inscrutable evidence showing that they're corrupting the very fabric of our society, and they've only taken action since they've been exposed. Right from the start, we have made clear that democracy is brought to its knees. The government is brought to its knees, despite what the other team has said, because of the manipulation of these companies. Our elections then don't reflect what the world needs, but rather what social media companies believe. And because of this pursuit of power, users are disregarded, and thus, people like Christopher Dowley suffer. His story should have us asking ourselves, how many more lives must be sacrificed at the altar of online validation before we wake up and realize social media companies don't care for consequences or the trail of shattered lives they leave behind? No, not when there's profit to be made. Do not be fooled. We are not people to them. We're data, neatly packaged and sold to the highest bidder. So really, are we using social media, or is it using us? Ultimately, please consider our argument a call to arms. We cannot afford to be led astray any longer. The danger is real and the choice is ours, to stand up for safety. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I'll kick it off. You're obviously all major users of social media, and you have to come up with reasons to support the argument or against the argument. Has any of the research that you've done changed your view on how you use or should use social media?
I think it's made me realise more what the actual dangers of social media are. Like having to argue that it is just dangerous has kind of made me realise that there are more risks to it than I thought before.
Okay, so how have you modified your behaviour as a result of that?
I'm just more aware when I'm using it that like what the companies are trying to do and how they do it and what I see is maybe not completely accurate when I'm looking at it.
I was doing research for both sides.
Yeah.
I was doing research for the disagreement, and it didn't change my mind, but it made me like expand my mind a little bit, and it made me notice that there are, even as we know and we can see clearly, that there's a lot that is really wrong and affecting people not the right way in social media. There are also good things, and I can't say that it changed my mind. But it was really like expanded my mind and how I work with information.
And you guys, would you have preferred to argue for the argument, or as you did, against the argument?
Yeah, for.
You would have argued for the argument. So you have, I'm sure you're aware, there's many laws that govern newspapers, TV. One of you mentioned TV advertising, but there's very few laws that govern the internet because it's international.
Yeah.
So, what has your research told you? What laws should be introduced to control what is the Wild West?
So it's like you cannot. So it's difficult. So you cannot control. So if like I'm just taking myself as an example. If I want to like post about what she said about like an example of like somebody as a, like he looks kind of bad, I'm making a meme out of him. They cannot know that I'm going to do that tomorrow at like 1. They don't know that. So, but if they know, there should be something that deletes it automatically. But so many people are doing it to just get attention or just to do. They just want to do it because I don't know. Maybe they're just crazy. So you cannot. So if you think it's gonna harm you, you should be mature and tell yourself that I'm not gonna read it. I'm not gonna just be on it. I'm just gonna. There's like many ways. Like myself, my mom is not allowing me to have a phone, so I don't have a phone yet. And if I need like information, I'm just asking my mom, or the school helps me with it, or my friends. And so that's why not much information is spreading. So that's why I think it's also a good way, but of course social media is very bad. That's what I think.
Anyone else got any questions? Dominate the debate.
It's a reflection that you six are amazing. I'm in awe. About 10 years ago, I got addicted to Facebook. It's like an old thing for old people. But I got really addicted and I blocked it, I did this, deleted the app, and I signed out of Facebook and I thought, I'm done. About a week later, I got an email.
Are you
saying, it said, "Dear Philip, just to let you know, Renata and George miss you on Facebook. Renata's my mum, George is my brother." And it was amazing. Somehow they worked that out. I didn't rejoin. A week later, oh, your best friend James misses you on James. How out of my, I have lots of friends, 900 on Facebook. I only have 6 now. But the power of them to try to claw me back onto Facebook. And I also am now about 10 years sober from Facebook.
I could just imagine if you were still on it, every kid in your school would be looking at your post. Oh, we went out Saturday night. Very dangerous for a teacher to be on social media, I would think. And what's your thoughts on the manipulation of the media? So we've had this terrible thing going on in the Middle East. You had the situation where the hospital was bombed.
I feel it's quite scary actually, because social media is putting the power of just a few people. For example, Elon Musk, he could really put out anything he wanted, right? And Mark Zuckerberg, he's Jewish, as you know. He could put out pro-Israeli stuff, and that would like overturn the Palestinian stuff.
Well, we had a debate before this started about Elon Musk. So, you know, he's got this satellite system that allows people in. When the Ukrainian war started, he gave the Ukrainians free use of it until they started to bomb Crimea, and then he switched it off. So you have an unelected power possibly influencing the outcome of a war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like then it goes into even what if there's moderators, what if they're controlled by another moderator as well? So then it just becomes a loophole of people are saying something because someone else has told them to say it.
So have any of you experienced hate mail on social media, or any of your friends suffered from it?
Yeah.
Yeah? What happened?
Basically on TikTok, just like anyone can follow you, right? But now I've got a private account, so you have to like accept friends.
Alright, okay.
But basically just hate comments.
Alright, okay. And that's a Chinese platform, isn't it, TikTok?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but what I know that in China, because my dad works in China, he is in China. TikTok is for educational purposes, like just I'm not gonna like inappropriate stuff that I know from Germany is not in there. It's like actually just for, of course, making Chinese the best country in the world. That's what they want to like tell the children that are watching it. And also they use it for a lot of educational purposes in China. In Germany it's getting out of control.
I have a question. Both of you teams have said you were more inclined to argue for the motion, which to me suggests, and from some of the things that you're saying, suggests that you doing this debate and preparing for this debate is kind of opening your mind, expanding your mind, as you put it, to the dangers of social media. Do you think in any way that we, as adults, as your teachers, as educators, as parents, whatever, should be doing more to help you understand this, because there does seem to be like the fact that you're sitting there and through having researched the debate, you're going, oh my God, this is actually quite dangerous. There are things we need to be really aware of, but it's perhaps taken doing a debate to discover some of that. It makes me think, what else should we be doing? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you think we should be doing more? Ella, what do you think?
Yeah, because through research, we're like all aware of the dangers, like, but what about children who haven't and their parents aren't guiding them? It's really important that parents like educate them and talk to them about it. So.
So you think that should be us in school? Do you think it should be done more at home? And
I think it's done quite a lot at school, in my opinion, in DSHE, but at home definitely more.
what do you
Yeah,
what do you
like
guys
for
think?
example, at home, maybe parents would check what their kids are looking at online, or maybe like there's like a safe search as well. You could make sure that your kids don't go on anything like inappropriate or like bad for them to read. And also, because there's like a lot of false information on it, so maybe they should ask the parent before they decide to search up.
Yeah, and conversations too, because I think that can, at some levels, be seen as a kind of like a punishment, or you can't do this, or we're going to, limit you in this way.
People,
But
which
what
they
you're
get
saying
at
is
some-
you yourselves understand it and want that protection. That's where I think things can maybe start to change. And yeah, Irina, what are you thinking?
I think we as a society are vulnerable, but not in a bad way. We can get influenced very easily because right now our planet is developing really quickly and we have to adapt. And if we don't adapt, we fall out. So I think it is right using social media. But as you said, I think that there has to be more education on it. For example, in our school, we have PSHE and we talk about it. And I think in this school, there is enough. But I think at home, there also have to be aware of this, so our generation doesn't go back and gets even more vulnerable and gets even more influenced by this, but we develop and we understand, we have the understanding that yes, there are dangers. I see this is dangerous, but I know it's dangerous, so I'm not going to be affected by it.
Bennett, you said you don't have a phone.
Yeah.
It's quite unusual.
Yeah, I
And listen, I admire your parents. They've set a series of rules and you live by them, which is fantastic. But what age then do you think, the rest of you think, that kids should be restricted to a phone? What age? Because I see them at 10, 11 years old, like that, looking at their phone.
Even younger, or in the airports. The people they're maybe 7 and 8 and already watching the whole time and they get addicted. If they have to go somewhere, they're first they have to realize where they are because they're in their own world and that. Also video games, stuff like Fortnite, it makes something in your brain because you think that's real life. You think if you then hear something from your parents, or if you maybe get to know that there's school shooting in America, then you think, oh yeah, maybe why not in our school? That's like my Fortnite game or something like that. So it gets very.
I think, as Emmy said, our brain develops, and I think we adults have to know about this, because if you give someone a phone and you didn't educate them properly to use the phone, they don't know how to use it. I think it already affects them and it's already affected and there's really hard to go back. So I think parents should be aware of all these developments, and there's also there have to be more.
To answer your question about what age we
Yeah.
should get phones, Personally, I think it's around 13, 14, because I think that's when we start assuming more responsibility and we're more knowledgeable, so we're able to kind of control our own safety on the platforms.
So if and when in the future you become parents, are you going to impose that rule on your children?
Would you accept it? You're going to control it more.
But that is a big problem because we, as the parents of your age, actually, did not grow up with that kind of technique. So we had to start with that from scratch with, I don't know, 20, 25, 30 years, whatever, depending on the age of the parents. And I think, especially for me, with 3 daughters, and the eldest one is 28, she started with a phone, was maybe 15, 16, because it was not available before. But I had to push myself very hard to learn all that stuff. So and I was not at the 60s, but nevertheless, she knew even more, and she knew earlier than me what to do with the mobile. And as I had started a little bit later than she, because of the purpose of watching her, I started with Facebook because I wanted to know what she's doing, and the children started with Facebook earlier. So I just pushed myself hard to learn it, and I think that is the advantage of your generation. When you later on have children, you can educate them in a different way because you know all that before. We had to start learning that it's dangerous. It was his first years, nobody talked about danger. It was Facebook, it was Instagram, whatever, and TikTok and Snapchat, and we laughed about it, we made some pictures, haha, hihi, but we didn't know about the danger and the influence it could take. Therefore, you are in a more privileged situation like parents one day, because you know all that before our generation. And I found it super difficult still today to tell my girls in that age between whatever, 13, 14 and adult, how to restrict them, because they weren't easy to restrict and to restrict with their handy and with their mobile. And I think it's a difficult position in schools. Yes, they should do more. If your school is doing enough, it's okay. I know from our school in Santa Ponsa, they tried in the elementary school, but nowadays, nothing. And for parents, it's super difficult, in my opinion.
But should it still be called a mobile phone device that we all carry?
Say that again?
Should it be called a phone?
Should
A
what
mobile
be called
phone. It's
Oh,
sold as a
yeah.
mobile phone. How many people actually use it as a phone?
Yeah.
You know, that's the thing. People give their kids that as, oh, it's so you can phone, but how many people actually use it as a phone?
Yeah.
That's a really good,
I would say for this debate, thinking about the motions that we had last year as well, there was so much you could say. It was literally, which of these 7 million points do we want to make? You know, with other motions, yeah, once you start researching it, you get more, you've got, you know, you start getting your points together, you might, what's another good point we could make? With this, it just is relating to what you're saying, it's not just a phone, it's just so many ways in which these, the social media influences us. It's a minefield almost, so, yeah.
So you've all got phones. Very good debate. Really good debate.
Well, here's the moment, you know how it all went. Could I ask, first of all, Gail, would you like to say a word or two about the debate you've just been listening to?
Excellent debate this morning, very good production from all of you, so well done. And thank you for taking the time to look in so much detail at the topic. You obviously have done more research. One of the tips I would say is if you're using props, make sure that the audience behind that they know what it is that you've actually given to us, because you may have given something to us that they have no idea what you've actually given to us. All right, so well done, everybody. All right, great morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, really thoroughly enjoyable, and it always is really enjoyable for us to see how much work you put into this. Just leading forward from Gail's points, when you're giving these presentations, you should bear in mind that you're giving facts, lots of facts, that the audience haven't necessarily researched or know anything about. And so therefore, you have to sort of orientate the audience a little bit. So I particularly liked it when there's phrases like, let me be clear, now consider again, and reiterating in the summary the actual words of the debate. because this makes the audience know where you are within it. It sometimes can come across that there's some facts that are kind of being fired out, many facts being fired out. And unless you pause then and let that sink in to the audience, then it can become a little bit confusing. So that would be my top tip, is to slightly slow down, give a pause, and just make sure that your audience are really going along with you. But otherwise, very impressive, very impressive.
Thank you, Sharon. Steve, would you like to come forward?
Wow, what a morning. Controversial as well. We had some rule breaking today. I haven't always seen rule breaking happening in debates, and there's just a couple of points I'd like to make. And the first is on the points of information. Be very careful with your points of information, because they're a key scoring aspect for the judges. The good use of points of information. And today, good news, all the points of information were relevant. They were good points of information. However, they should only be 15 seconds. You can use points of information tactically to steal some time from your opponents, but it's got to be relevant and it has to be succinct. Some of the points of information were very succinct, very well delivered. The second is also the handling of the points of information is not to start a conversation between, because again, this is unfair to the opposing team to steal time away from them. The second point I'd like to make is around reading. It is so frustrating. You people invest so much time doing so much research into these topics and getting really good structured arguments. But then if the delivery is fettered by looking down and reading, A, it gives you no confidence because you're not engaging with the audience. But also, we just lose it. We lose that presentation. So I thought, well, what would I do if I was in your shoes trying to prepare for these debates? And I would do the research, and I would structure my argument out. And you've probably got 4 or 5 points is what you're making in your presentation. And I would rehearse it, and I'd read through it, and I would read through it with my notes like this, in my bedroom. And then I would summarise those 4 different areas into just 4 words for each of the 4 points to remind me of my structure of my presentation. And I would rehearse that going through the presentation, only having my 4 words as my prompt. And then I would summarise it even further by just having 1 key word that reminds me of the structure of my discussion. And if you do that, you find that your body completely then opens up. You're not hunched up over notes, which just makes us engage with you. So, the results. The best debater today was a difficult discussion that we had. But I think what clinched it in the end was just a fantastic summary. So the best debater today, I'd like to say, is Ella.
Ella, would you like to come forward? I'm sure there'll be a couple of photographs. Beside the jury spokesman. Thank you very much. And a big smile.
And then the best team.
Congratulations.
The best team of today is, I've now got a terrible memory. Because I can't remember the 2 scores now. Mallorca International. I'm so sorry for forgetting your school's name. That's shocking.
Mm.